At this time, we will have a dramatization on Sojourner Truth from our fourth panelist, Reverend Betty Kennedy.
I'm Isabella Boomfrey. I was born in 1797. I was born on a big farm called a plantation. And my mother loved me. She would stroke my little brown cheeks and kiss me and rock me. She told me how pretty I was and her dream for me. She would take me out at night and said, "Belle, you see that moon? That's the same moon that shines over your brothers and sisters wherever they are." And in the daylight hour, she'd take me out and show me the sun. She said, "Belle, that's the same sun. You see that sun? It's the same sun that shines over your brothers and sisters, wherever they are." Oh, I was so happy. She would rock me, put me on her knees, but something happened. The master died, and they moved all of us to the basement. The basement was cold. It was wet. It was damp. It was not fit for anyone to live in, but that's where we stayed. I heard them talking about selling me. They were going to sell me. I didn't know what selling meant, but sure enough, they sold me. They sold me to the Neelys, and the beating started. You see, on the plantation, we spoke Dutch. They said, "Get the broom and sweep the floor." I didn't know what they were saying. "Get the dishwater, do this and do that." I didn't know what they were saying, for I spoke Dutch, and the beating started. They sold me from the Neelys to the Shrivers. It wasn't any better. The beatings continued, for I didn't understand. They sold me from the Shrivers to the Dumonts. Old man Dumont wasn't any better. The beatings continued. There was a law in New York State that on the 4th of July, 18 and 27, all of the slaves were going to be free. I was going to be free, y'all. I was so happy I was going to be free. I worked hard. The next morning was going to be the 4th of July, and I was going to be free. Old man Dumont freed everyone, all of the other slaves but me. He kept me. And I cried. I cried till way over in the night. I cried because I wanted to be free. I said I was going to run away. I was going to run away to New York City. And I did. Late one night, I got up and I went to New York City. The good church folks were good to me. They helped me to find a place to stay and gave me clothes and food, and they were mighty good to me. I enjoyed knowing those ladies and those men who helped me. Now, here it was. I had come and got a job and was working very hard. Now, the bus there was pulled with horses. As I stood waiting to catch the bus to go to my work, it passed me by. So I had to walk. The next morning, I stood. I waited to catch the bus. It passed me by. I said, I won't do that no more. The next morning, as I stood, I stepped out in front of those horses and I stopped them. And I got on. Said, "You're going to sit up there with the horses." I said, "I will not sit up there with the horses. I'll sit where I please." And he pushed me. I sued the bus company and I won the battle. Well, I heard these folks over here, they were against slavery, so I joined them. And I talked to them. I spoke loudly as I worked and mingled among those folks. Well, these folks over here was for women's rights. women had a right to vote. They had a right to do so much. So I joined them, and I stood among them and I talked. Well, it was much like this day. The place was packed with people, and I came in. My friend that was with me kept pulling my dress tail. I said, I'm going to go down front. She said, I'm going to sit in that seat right there. They pulled me. No. I said, yes, I am. And I down the front I went, and I sat in that seat, and I listened to that man. And I said, let me speak. I stood up. I said, that man up there says that a woman didn't have no rights. No rights. A woman has to be helped into carriages and over ditches. No one ever helped me into carriages over mud puddles. Now ain't I a woman? Look at my arms. I have plowed, I have planted, I've gathered barns, and no man could head me. I could eat as much as any man when I could get it. I have had 13 children, and I've seen most of them sold into slavery. Now ain't I a woman? That little man over there in the black suit says a woman has no right because Christ wasn't a woman. But where did your Christ come from? Came from God and woman, and man had nothing to do with it. Now ain't I a woman? Now if the first woman that God ever made could turn this world upside down, then women together can turn it right side up again. Now ain't I a woman? I met the president, your president, Abraham Lincoln. I sat down with him, and I told him about this thing called slavery, how I hated it. The whippings, the hangings, the beatings, the killings. I didn't like it, Mr. President, I told him as I sat and talked to him. He listened to me, and he wrote the Emancipation Proclamation that set us free. Well, I am a preacher. I'm a preacher in the African American church. And I had called a group, y'all come. Cornered them off, and I was preaching to them. And here come those folks. There they come, y'all, with the sticks and the rocks. And they chunked us, and we ran and hid. I ran and hid too. But as I had my Bible in my hand, I said, this is the Bible. I got my Bible. I chased them away. I could read the Bible, but I memorized the whole Bible. I carried with me a little book, and everybody I meet, you sign my book, please? I ask them. Look there. I got President Ulysses Grant. Well, I got Abraham Lincoln's name in here. Look at my book. All of these great folks in my book. I can't read their names, but they're in my book. Oh, how precious this book is. I died. I died in 1883. I died of pneumonia. But my name will go down in history as a great leader of our people. I am Sojourner Truth. It happened that as I came down the stairs one day from the apartment, a great light shone over me. And so your name is not Isabella. Your name will be Sojourner. Sojourner. I will travel and preach the gospel wherever I go to whoever will listen. Sojourner. But as I looked at the Bible that day, they chased me. Truth is the name. I took Truth as my last name. I will go down in history as a woman who stood for rights for women, who fought against slavery. Yes, Sojourner Truth.
I believe Miss Barbara Brown has come in, and she was also on the program to do a dramatization. Miss Barbara, as you're coming, Barbara is a Lufkin native. She graduated from Lufkin Dunbar, Prairie View A&M with a BS degree in sociology, University of Georgia with an MS in early childhood education. She has taught for over 27 years as an educator. She's taught in the Lufkin School District, the Gifted and Talented program, and also in Atlanta, Georgia, and Garrett and Kurth Brandon elementary schools here. Ms. Brown?
I was born in 1917 in Mississippi. I started working in the cotton fields when I was just 6 years old. And can you imagine how my hands felt in the middle of the day and how my feet were hurting? I was just a child. And they was making me pick that cotton. Those memories bring tears to my eyes when I happen to think of those times in the cotton field. I tell you, one day something happened. This was 1962. And we couldn't vote in the state of Mississippi if we were the wrong color and lived on the wrong side of the tracks and were poor. That's just the way it was. So some of us got together, about 18 of us, black men and women, and got on a bus and went down to the courthouse one day. And when we got there, them policemen were waiting on us, and the state trooper with their billy clubs and their guns. And we sat on that bus for quite a while because we were scared. We were fearful. We didn't know what they were going to, how far they were going to go. We knew what they wanted to do to us and what they'd planned to do to us. And then I got up, Fannie Lou Hamer. I got off the bus and walked through them policemen and them state troopers and went on inside of that courthouse. We were coming to the courthouse to be registered to vote. And during that time, they had a literacy test for you. And if you missed one thing on the test, they stamped on your registration sheet, denied. And all of us went in and answered as many questions as we could, but we all failed the literacy test. And I kept going back. I wasn't about to give up. I went back 3 times. It took me 3 times to pass the literacy test, but I passed it. And I'm telling you, after that, I started teaching the literacy test to other blacks. You know, like they do now with the PACE test. The parents teach the children the test before they get to school to take it. Well, I started teaching the literacy test. And, you know, I told you I started picking cotton when I was 6 years old. Well, when I got grown, I was still working on that same farm as a sharecropper. And then I got married And my husband and I were working on that same farm, sharecropping. I was the last one born to Noella, my mama, and her husband, my daddy, Mr. Townsend, of 20 children. My mama and daddy had 20 children. And I'm proud that I was one of them. Something happened after we went down to the courthouse to vote. They started coming after me because I was the first one off the bus. That night, I stayed with one of my friends, and they shot 16 bullets into that house. They kept on threatening my life, and all the others were who had been on that bus. But we didn't give up. It made me a stronger person. And after that, I got with some of my friends, and we started an organization to bring students from the North to come to Mississippi to teach blacks how to fill out those applications for registration. They also came down to teach the literacy test so we could start voting. And when they came down, I know their parents were really upset because they didn't have any idea whether they would ever see their children again going to Mississippi to straighten out some of the things in the South. And while they were there, they stayed in our homes and sat on our front porches and ate our good Southern food. Half of them didn't want to leave because of that food. They enjoyed being with us, and they enjoyed our stories that we could tell about long ago. And they were just like our own children. Of course, some of the white men got pretty upset because they said, now, what are those black men doing to our girls who's living out there in them colored folks' houses? Those black men were helping to cook. They were helping to clean. And they were showing those children how much they loved their wives. That's what they were doing. And one day, a group of us went on to Mississippi. And it was in a bus terminal, and there was a restaurant in there. And we went and we sat down in the restaurant. And they called the police. And they started beating us and carrying us to jail. And they did me worse than they did the others because they figured out I was the leader. They told 2 black prisoners when we were in jail to come over there and beat me a little bit more. And those 2 black men beat me and beat me and beat me until they were totally exhausted. They couldn't beat anymore. I nearly lost one of my eyes, and one of my kidneys were damaged. But you know what? He gave this old black woman even more courage to keep on fighting and not to give up. One of my friends and I got together and started an organization called the Federated Democratic Party. And the group of us went to the Democratic Convention in 1968. They tried to keep us out, but they couldn't keep us out. There wasn't no way. We'd come too far from Mississippi to be turned back. And when we got inside and it was time for us to make our speech, I was a speaker. And they figured because I was from Mississippi, I didn't know how to talk. Now, you all have heard Martin Luther King. But that day I was stepping right along with him. I gave them plenty to think about and let them know we weren't turning back. We weren't going nowhere. And I used that thing that everybody says. I'm tired of being tired. And I ain't going back. Now you see this here jacket I got on today? It ain't mine. One of the mission sisters at the church let me wear it because I go all over the country now making speeches. And they didn't want me to wear that same old plaid dress that I'd worn so many times. And this here purse, one of my friends is a maid and works in this real big house for this white woman. She's the maid. The white woman sent me this purse. That was her way of helping. She said, now, I don't want Fannie Lou going around all over this country and not having a decent purse. Yeah. I have a story to tell. And I've told you most of it, but there's so much more that I could tell you today. And not only do I have a story to tell, I have a testimony. God has brought me from a mighty long way, and I ain't looking back. And we ain't like that song that the Clark sisters recorded. It says, I coulda, I shoulda, I woulda. We ain't looking back. Our song is, I wanna and I'm gonna. And we're going to keep on stepping and keep on believing. We know God's not dead. He's still working miracles. He still cares about us. And we're mighty grateful for his grace, for waking us up this morning, for his mercy. Because now we don't do everything right, but he comes on and sees about us anyway, and we're mighty happy about it. Now, I'm going to get somewhere and sit down because I could talk all the day long about the Lord and what he done for me. And I know you can too because he's brought us from a mighty, mighty long way. And we ain't through yet. Thank you. I appreciate it.